Yeah, thank you, Chantal. We think that it's a very important part of the development of any adolescent, any pubescent human being. And if we assume that puberty is a very important part, a very important phase, if you wish, of any human being's life, well, then we need to take it seriously. It's a time when we ask very important questions. How do we learn? How do we lead? How do we love? How do we communicate? It's a time when we look at what kind of adult we'd like to be one day, what we'd like to do when we grow up. It's also a time where the power, the influence of the group is all consuming. It's never going to be more important in your life. And you need to look up to that or into that. If you watch pubescent human beings, they mirror each other more than adult human beings do. They bounce things off each other. They learn a lot from each other. I've always said to them, you must know that you're mirrors. And whatever I say to you as a pubescent to another pubescent, I see your reaction. If it's a good reaction, okay, I've learned a piece of data. I can adjust my behavior accordingly. If it's a bad reaction, I need to think, why was that a bad reaction? So, it's a time of experimentation. It's a time of thought. It's a time of freedom. And so we believe that it's very, very important then to take all of those considerations and to make it part of the schooling model. And so the schooling model is something at Reddam House, Waterfall, that reflects the needs of pubescents. So we expect them to be more involved in dialogue, in the group, in experimentation with different learning methods. We enable them to lead, we enable them to get involved in service projects so that they see how they feel about all of that kind of stuff. And we expect them to have a voice. Stand up on your hind feet and say, this is my opinion. This is what I believe in. Let's test that. Let's learn about that. They have full representative structures where they are listened to, and that gets brought through to management meetings where I listen to that. I give them feedback. So their voice is very important to them, that they start learning to give an opinion, which is very, very important in pubescence. There's nothing worse than for them to say something and just no adult in the piece listens to it. So we hope that that's done properly, leads on to the next phase of development in adolescence, which is late adolescence, where the power of the group becomes less important and the power of the individual becomes more important. They become quite selfish. Certainly by the time matric comes along, they can be quite unpleasantly selfish, but that's all good, because if you don't learn to do that, you can't learn that part of your character when you become an adult. So the pubescent part, the late adolescent part, done properly, leads to significance in adulthood. And so we think it's important, and that's why we've placed such a large amount of effort, energy into that whole process and established the middle school. This is something we think about all the time and continually adjust. Middle schools are still quite rare in South Africa. They seem to be coming, we've talked about them that I know of since the late 80s, early 90s, but there's certain structures within the South African schooling system that don't really take to middle schooling and the other way around. So we've been talking about it for a long time. They appear to be becoming a lot more prominent now. And I think it's as society changes and as young adolescents are thrust more and more into the limelight through the likes of TikTok and Instagram, that people are starting to say they're a cohort of humans that need special attention. So, we're a holistic school. We look at all aspects of education as being important. Obviously, academics and academic rigor is critical. It's probably the most important thing in all schooling. And that if you're not getting the academics right, well, everything else is going to be incidental, really. Of course, we have extra curricular activities, whether that's sport or culture, and we expend a lot of time and resource on that. We have service projects, but we also have thinking about yourself, metacognition projects, so that you're not just a human in isolation. No man is an island, no woman is an island, but you're part of society. What does that mean? We expect holism. We think it's a very important foundation for the middle school to operate in. But within that, and perhaps it's full holism, that we expect freedom of expression. You need to say, this is what I think, as I said just now, but not disrespectfully, taking into account the thoughts of others, the fact that you're in a group. How does my freedom of choice, my freedom of expression affect others and how they're thinking? So it's thoughtful communication. Of course, it has to be experimental. We still have academic rigor. Of course, we have to. That is South Africa, and in fact, academic rigor around the world is not going anywhere. It seems in some countries to be becoming more intense. So we still have academic rigor, but we don't assess as much, perhaps, as we would have in early days, where we have an approach that looks at other forms of assessment, more personally based assessment. So as I said before, we free their voice. That's important. We give them a lot more choice in terms of subject. Each middle schooler does about 13 subjects. Obviously, some are more intense than others, but we give them choice. Do you want to try a bit of dance? Do you want to try a bit of French? Do you want to try a bit of physical education, something that's fallen out of vogue in schools? And then give them the opportunity, as I said, to talk in groups. That's very important. And just to be a middle schooler, to be a pubescent, to be that human being. Because in the past, we've often, when a student, when they have wild swings of emotion, as we all do during pubescence, not to downplay that, not to gaslight it, to say, well, okay, you're happy now, you're sad then, it's okay. That's full hormones. You're growing, your body's changing. You need to feel sad. You need to feel happy. Let that go. Own your feelings. Understand your feelings. That was very downplayed in times past, and we try not to do that. So I think those are the basic aspects. It's reduced all education, whether that's in the preschool or the junior primary or the senior primary or the college, wherever it is. It's reduced it to its essentials, really, if at all. I mean, we listen with growing concern to schools in some parts of South Africa where it's reduced it to seemingly nothing. And we worry greatly about the students in those schools. So it's become essentialized. It's become, if we look at academics, for example, in our case, we haven't lost a day of academic work, but a lot of that has been in a fairly sterile, austere platform of austerity and sterility, which is, teacher, child doesn't have to present face to face. They are seemingly face to face, but they're not. It's actually through the medium of the Wi-Fi and whatever it is. So I can portray a persona that's not really me. I don't really need to own it. I can put it, it's like a big selfie, if you wish. So that's really what we've become as a society. And of course, the middle school, which has such a need for face-to-face interaction with peers, such a need to give an opinion, such a need to own your opinion, to take part in, has been particularly hard hit. Perhaps most poignantly. So, I mean, academics is online. Sport has been stopped. Well, until very recently, it has been stopped. Government, and understandably, government regulations have said that. Cultural activities have been severely impaired. You can sing online, you can play music online, but really it's not the real thing. And then I think most poignantly, service opportunities just been completely reduced, and that's where it's probably most needed, and is a grave concern of mine. I'm not sure how a lot of service providers, whether they're an orphanage or a feeding scheme or whatever it is, operate in an environment where there's such strict control, even though it's understandable. So I would say COVID has had a profound impact on, I mean, of course it has. It's trite to say, we all know this. It's had a profound impact on society, on education in general, but particularly where human beings of a certain age, 12 to 15, have this intense need to be, so intensely human. We belong, as do the other Reddam House schools. There are 3 in the Cape. There are 2 in KwaZulu-Natal. There are 3 in Gauteng. We belong to a group called Inspired Education. It's headquartered in London. It encompasses, owns 64 schools around the world, 5 continents, I think 50,000 students. And that gives us a great amount, gives us the opportunity to access, but also to contribute, which is equally as important, to global best practice. We have a number of resources available to us as a result of that. For example, we operate something, we host here at Reddam House Waterfall for the country, something called the International Foundation Year, which is part of the Northern Consortium UK Charity Trust, which basically prepares a pathway for students, our students that want to go and study in the UK, for example, to prepare properly for that. We belong to another group called ARET, which does the same for the US. We belong to the Berklee College of Music, which gives huge opportunities for our students. And we belong to OzTAS, which is a global tutoring service to enable kids to access world-class tutors if they're struggling with, trigonometry or whatever it is. So yeah, that family that we belong to is very important to us. Of course, in normal times, we have huge amounts of exchange, both staff and student, with schools overseas. That's been brought to a swift halt. We just watch with great interest what happens with the red list in the UK, for example. But yeah, so that's the first part. The second part is that as a brand, Reddam House was started by our founder, Graham Crawford, esteemed educationalist, and based on a few well understood principles, foundations. We unashamedly talk about excellence. We unashamedly talk about world-class education. We unashamedly talk about premium facilities, being a premium school, and facilities both academic and extracurricular. We talk about respect for the individual. We talk about the individual having a voice, the individual being part of the global community and being able to make a difference irrespective of where it is that they end up. And we talk about individuals being aware of themselves, being aware of how they learn, metacognition, how they lead, because every one of us is a leader to some extent, irrespective of the scope of that. We're a leader, even if it's of ourselves. And that puts a lot of responsibility on our shoulders, really. So yeah, all of those things, we say to, it's a religious expectation to those whom much has been given, much is expected. And I think that's a very healthy way of looking at the world, and to counteract the kind of narcissistic tendencies that we're seeing. No man is an island. You need to develop yourself, but at the same time, do not forget those around you, and be aware of the fact that you're part of a society, that the expectations there, don't forget people, but that's not just one way, that it works both ways. And I've often said to students, if you're serving others, actually the person who benefits most is yourself, not them. But yeah, so that's really in a nutshell. We can talk about it a lot, but those I think are the basic tenets of it all, Chantal.